listening to God speak to us from the gospel in the tradition of Mark.
Glory to the Lord.
In his teaching, Jesus said, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes, be greeted in market squares, and take the front seat in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. These are the ones who swallow the property of widows and offer lengthy prayers for the sake of appearance. They will be judged all the more severely." Jesus sat down opposite the collection box and watched the people putting money into it, and many of the rich put in a great deal. A poor widow came and put in 2 small coins, the equivalent of a penny. Then Jesus called the disciples and said to them, "I tell you solemnly, this poor widow has put in more than all those who have contributed to the treasury, for they have put money in from their surplus, but she has put in everything she possessed, from the little she had, all she had to live on." And this is the gospel, the good news of our salvation.
Praise the Lord.
By the words of the gospel, may our sins be blotted out.
Amen.
We probably would have heard of this story. It was titled The Widow's Mite. And the story is what we hear today. This poor woman who has practically nothing to live on goes to the temple and, without any notice from anybody, secretly puts in her donation. One of the traditions of the wealthy were to have horns blown around the treasury so that when they would go up, everybody would be looking to see what they were doing. And then they would put in their donation or their tithe, whatever it may be. But this woman, this poor woman, had no trumpets blowing, and she gave all she had to live on. I think the story that Jesus is telling us here, and the example is that so often we think that we are giving to the church, to our faith, to our traditions, to whatever it is, and yet we can go back and never feel the pinch of that donation, whether that be of time or talent or treasure. And sometimes we forget that when we give something, it doesn't necessarily have to bleed us dry, but there is that sense of feeling that I gave not out of my surplus, but rather out of my need. Someone had given me a little plaque one time, and it says, "Give God what is right, not what is left." And I think that that's the story that we have. We make sure that everything we need is in place, and then whatever is left, that goes to the church, or that goes to the charity, or that goes to the poor, or that goes to whatever situation we are donating to. It reminds me of a story. A little boy was on his way to church, and in the old days, the early Mass, there was a Mass for the kids, and then the adults would come later on or earlier, whatever the case may be, and they would go with their classes from the school. So this little boy, all dressed up in his school uniform, and his mother says, "Now here are 2 quarters. One is for the church, The other is for you to stop and get something at the bakery on the way home. Okay. So the kid went, and he was skipping down the road, skipping down the street, and he was fooling around with his friends, and one knocked him, and he almost fell, and all of a sudden one of the coins, the quarters fell and went down the drain. And he goes, "Well, sorry, God, there goes yours." And that's what we do sometimes. You know, we want to hold on to what we have instead of giving. In the Gospel of Luke, Luke says that when you give open-handedly. Literally, what Luke is saying is that you take whatever it is in your pocket, you hold it out, you turn your head, and they take whatever it is that they need. And that's the example of a Christian. It's not saying, well, okay, I have $3 and I'll give you $1 and I'll keep $2, because we don't bargain like that. Luke says, open your hand. Open-handed charity. Open-handed charity. I've often mentioned that charity is a double-sided coin. We as church people are asked to give to charity, to give to those who are less fortunate than we. And we have heard that all our lives, and not in the Catholic Church, but in all churches, all synagogues, all mosques. The idea of the poor is always there in front. And that those who have should give to those who have not. And it's easy to do that because when I give to the poor, I'm in control. I decide who gets what. I am the one who parcels out my benefits to those who wait with open arms. The other side of the coin of charity is the charity of receiving well. And we don't do that very often. We don't like being on the receiving end of charity because we're not in control. Someone else is in control of what we receive. And so we find ourselves embarrassed. We find ourselves a little bit anxious about what's going on. And we don't receive well because we don't want to be in debt to anybody. And yet that coin is charity. Both sides is charity. To give joyfully to those who have not, and to receive joyfully from those who have. And that's not necessarily what we're talking about, the coin of the realm. The fact that someone is willing to help us in our need. The fact that someone is willing to extend an open hand when we find ourselves in trouble. To receive as well as to give with joy. And so tonight, I'm sure this woman, as we read this story once again, gave all that she had to live on. But as she walked away from the collection box in the Temple Mount, someone may have seen, and someone may have slipped her a couple of coins so that she would not be in dire need. Pay it forward, whatever you want to call it. But God gives us what we need, not necessarily what we want. And we need to do the same for one another. To be willing to give, even if it hurts. But it only hurts for a little while, because someone else will soothe that pain and give us also what we need.